All right, let's keep moving up. We see this region down here. This is the spinal cord. This is where we just left, the spinal cord. Now we're transitioning to the brain proper. And the first organizing area of the brain is something called the brainstem. And the brainstem doesn't fit neatly in those Latin organizing schemes we learned about in the first slide. The stem refers to the stem of a plant. You'll see in neuroanatomy that we use a lot of these plant-based references sometimes. And so this is the stem or stalk of the brain, if you will. And it's made up of three components: the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain. The midbrain actually goes all the way up into here. This should be blue right here as well. Okay, and this is part of the thalamus. That probably shouldn't be blue. This should be blue. Okay, brainstem makes up the medulla, pons, and midbrain. Classic question I like to ask on quiz or exams. I think it's an easy question, but a bunch of students get this one wrong. What components make up the brainstem? The answer is medulla, pons, and midbrain. Let's talk about the functions. Now we're going to start talking about form and function. First of all, the brainstem has some generic functions. First of all, let's start with these two. We continue the sensory in, motor out. So when the sensory information comes in the spinal cord, it keeps going up. It goes all the way up to a specific cortical area, and then it triggers information that sends motor output down and out. So one of the main functions of the brainstem generally is a continuation of the sensory in pathway and the motor out pathway. The next function is general function, something called the arousal center. I'll speak about this in the next slide. It's an area that keeps you alert and awake. But hold that thought. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Now, more specifically, the midbrain has two pieces to it: superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. So the superior is this little bump here, and the inferior is this little bump here. Remember, superior is up, inferior is down. The superior colliculus transmits visual information, and the inferior colliculus transmits auditory information. All right. Then we have the pons, more specific features of the pons. The pons has this peculiar function associated with REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And there are some things that happen during rapid eye movement sleep, including the rapid eye movements and fluctuations in heart rate and respiration and things called PGO spikes and spindles. But there's also something, that happens. You have muscle atonia, and you also get penile erections and vaginal secretions. Those are all called phasic events that occur during REM sleep. We'll talk about these much later in the semester, okay? But for right now, please know if you damage the pons, you lose those phasic functions of REM sleep. So that is one of the functions of the pons. Finally, the medulla. The medulla is a critical area. It has a critical breathing center, which we learned about. We learned about what a nerve was. And then it has a similar cardiac center. So if you damage either of these, you're going to die. Okay, so if you get in a car accident and you have a whiplash so bad that you damage parts of the medulla, you will not survive that. Okay, so medulla, very important functions: a respiratory center and a cardiac center. Those are the main players in the brainstem.